Hey movie fans, one of my most anticipated movies of 2025, if not my most anticipated movie of 2025, is James Gunn's Superman. I'm just a massive fan of the character of Superman, and I'm really excited / curious about what James Gunn is going to bring to the table. We've gotten little teases here and there that he's dropped on social media, and with each passing one, I'm more and more excited about the direction he's most likely going to take. So today, before the first trailer drops, because there's rumors that we're getting it soon, I want to put my official thoughts, theories, and opinions out there just in case anything drastic happens with the trailer. I want to have it in stone before that. That way I can be either wildly right or wildly wrong just in case. I don't think there'll be any spoilers in that first trailer, but just in case. And it's also never too early to talk about Superman. So before we start talking about it, I think it's important to know where James Gunn's headspace is according to the man himself. He's pretty active on social media, and for the most part, as long as they're not massive spoilers, if people ask him stuff, he's pretty responsive. So somebody asked him a very interesting question about what comics are most inspiring this version of Superman. And James Gunn gave 4 specific titles. So let's look at those titles and kind of the broad information and extrapolate that information for our predictions. So the 4 comics that James Gunn specifically singled out that were worth mentioning were All-Star Superman, Superman for All Seasons, Superman Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and Kingdom Come. So firstly, let's look at All-Star Superman, because that one might be the most important comic to look at just from a sole perspective of it's the one picture that they've been using over and over and over again. When James Gunn announced this project was happening, this was the picture that he used, making me think, okay, All-Star Superman has to be important in some degree to this movie. So basically, what is All-Star Superman? At the start of the story, Superman gets overexposed to radiation thanks to some elaborate plan by Lex Luthor, and he finds out he only has a year left to live. So it's basically Superman / Clark Kent getting all of his affairs in order before he's no longer around and the world has to say goodbye to Superman. It's basically a greatest hits album for Superman, of doing all these great heroic acts, these great feats of strength and wonder, but also little intimate moments that illustrate the connection that Superman has with all of his characters and the people in his larger world. It's a lot of people's picks for the best Superman comic, so it makes sense that there's going to be some involvement to that. Next up, James Gunn mentioned that he's looking at Superman for All Seasons, which, guys, oh, I was so ecstatic when I heard that, because Superman for All Seasons is not just my favorite Superman comic of all time, it is my favorite comic, period. I absolutely adore this story. So what is Superman for All Seasons? Well, Superman for All Seasons is basically like a year 1 or year 2 Superman story of Clark moves to Metropolis, bright and optimistic, going, I'm gonna save the world, and then the crushing weight of reality kind of sets in pretty quickly on our eternally optimistic character. You have Lex Luthor that basically sees Superman as a threat. He's got this perfect ecosystem built, but then the person that's doing things for good, just for goodness sake, threatens Luthor naturally. So he creates this whole army of basically robots and soldiers that kind of do Superman's job for him, but are less comforting. They're very cold and clinical. They're the antithesis to Superman. They just do the task, but there's no heart and emotion to it. Because of that, and through some other factors that Luthor kind of blames on Superman, Clark kind of goes back to Smallville with his tail between his legs, hangs out with his parents for a little bit, reestablishes and learns who he is again after spending a decent chunk of time in Smallville, and then goes back to Metropolis bigger and better than ever before, knowing who he is deep down, which is Superman. Next, James Gunn mentioned Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Now, this is a old school classic Superman story that's very reminiscent of that golden era of Superman from like the late 30s, early 40s. That's a throwback to that style. It's got Luthor, Brainiac, adds some other mystery characters that I don't really want to spoil it for you because it's a good twist in the story. I'm curious how much he's going to implement this one, just because, again, there's a big twist in it that I don't see them necessarily implementing for this movie, but there's a character in that while I don't think they'll be in this Superman, I can 100% see James Gunn, of all people, using this character down the road, if that makes sense. I think they'll use Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow as an inspiration, more of just the Superman that is kind of isolated. He wants to do good, but the rest of the world still isn't necessarily sure. But there's some interesting elements that I don't know how they'll be implemented, but it's interesting that James Gunn cites this as one of the sources of inspiration. Lastly, James Gunn mentioned Kingdom Come, which is a Superman story, but it's a Justice League story more than anything else, with Superman playing a very pivotal character, and I think Kingdom Come will be one of the biggest inspirations for the upcoming Superman movie. So what is Kingdom Come? Basically, all the main Justice Leaguers that you know and love have gotten old and kind of retired. They passed the torch of heroism to the next generation of superheroes. The problem is that next generation of superheroes are kind of massive jerks and have not carried the baton well. They're overly aggressive, they're fame-seeking, they're vain, they're cruel, they're not the heroes that people love anymore. They're so disconnected from reality, they're disconnected from the people that they save. So you have Superman and a bunch of the old guard having to come back out of retirement to teach this new group of heroes this is the way things are supposed to go. This is the hope and optimism that you were supposed to bring to people. The antithesis to Superman in this story is a guy named Magog. He's the hero that more or less chased Superman out because when it came down to it, Superman wouldn't change who he was. And the group of people at the time agreed with Magog's theories. More people agreed with the new school than the old school that was Superman. That is going to be incredibly important for the new Superman movie. So now that we looked at those 4 comics, so just broad sense of what the story's about, let's kind of throw them all together in a giant melting pot, analyze the results, and kind of give you my general thoughts, theories, predictions, opinions on what direction I think the story is going to go. But basically, I think the broad sense of this movie is that it's going to be about a good man standing up for a new way of thinking, very much like the Captain America Winter Soldier of this is right and this is wrong. How does a black and white character exist in a gray world? It's about a man standing up and standing out in a very difficult world around him. Okay, let's talk about the suit real quick, because I know opinions are very divided this time around. People are like, it looks too much like the Guardian suit of like too much line work and everything else. I'm curious to see it in action first before I reserve full judgment. I like that the trunks are back, and I like that the cape has the S on the back again. I think the costume looks the way it does for a very specific reason, and it's one that I'm very excited about, and I'm sticking with it till the very end on this theory. I think the reason this suit looks not as good as the Man of Steel suit, because I think that's still one of the best comic book suits of all time. I think this suit looks okay because it's a homemade suit, not made by Superman though, but by his mother. I'm going out on a limb and saying we're getting classic Superman here of his mom makes the suit. In Superman for All Seasons, there's that iconic line about, thanks, my mom made it for me. This suit is supposed to be made by his mom. I think we're gonna get back to that in this movie. Of the reason the suit looks a little homemade is because it is homemade by his mom. I'm sticking with that, and I think that James Gunn will include that scene from For All Seasons and Superman and Lois.
Cool costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
It's gonna be cheesy and corny, but that's kind of what Superman is. I think the movie will see Superman as a young, upstart, independent hero who will end up clashing with more established veteran heroes that will probably be working for somebody else at the time. So I think what we're gonna have is an inverse of Kingdom Come. So basically in Kingdom Come, you had an old, weathered Superman that basically has to come back to teach the new school. This is the way things are supposed to be done as heroes. I think this time around, it's going to be young, upstart Superman that has to remind a jaded, cynical group of superheroes, this is the way you used to do it, and this is the way you're supposed to do it. Now, we know we're going to get some other heroes in this. You're going to have people like Mr. Terrific, you got Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl. Why are they going to clash Superman? I think all of those superheroes aren't actually independent. They're going to be like the boys. They're all working for somebody else. I don't think it's Lex Luthor. I think they're all going to be working for Maxwell Lord, who is actually going to be played by Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother. I think Luthor is still the big bad here, but I think Maxwell Lord is the one funding this superhero team, which I'm going to assume is the Terrifics, which is a group led by Mr. Terrific, and given that Mr. Terrific's in this movie. And yeah, and it'll be Superman more or less clashing with the older established guard, going, hey, you're great superheroes. Why are you doing the things that you are? As for the film's main villain, James Gunn has already stated that it'll be Lex Luthor, as, you know, it probably should be, because Lex Luthor. But what kind of Lex Luthor are we going to get? We've had many different incarnations of Lex Luthor, just like we've gotten different incarnations of Superman that focus on different things. I think this version of Luthor is going to be much more of the scientist, create madness type character, more so than the scheming politician, run for mayor of Metropolis type thing. He'll still put on the friendly face, but behind the scenes, he's the mad scientist type. I think he's going to create his own anti-Superman, not necessarily a Bizarro, but his own version, if we're sticking with the Kingdom Come analogy, his own version of Magog. He'll see Superman's actions and just go, hey, I can just corporatize that. I can put up my own poster boy. I can create my own Superman. And obviously that's not gonna work. But when the people of Metropolis, through Lex Luthor's genius marketing campaign, start to resent Superman and like this new hero instead, which is where we get Superman for All Seasons into the equation, because, like I said, I think Clark will have to go back to Smallville for an extended length of time with his tail between his legs, reevaluate. I thought this was going to be so easy. Just be the good guy and people will always love you for being the good guy. And then not one, but two of his parents will be there to reassure him you're doing the right thing. That's right. I'm going to have both Ma and Pa Kent this time around, and they're going to stay alive the entire movie. No dead Pa Kent. I get that that's some versions of Superman. That's his inciting incident to become Superman. In other versions of the comics, though, both of his parents are alive for multiple years to see their son become the world's greatest hero. I think James Gunn's gonna go that route this time. Then, after getting a pep talk from his parents, he'll go back to Metropolis, continue to do the right thing, maybe sway those new heroes to join his side, and by the end of it, after he's defeated Luthor and whatever Luthor's thing is, after Luthor has lost, Superman has won the day, Superman and his new friends will do what we've all been waiting for a while. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that we are going to see the Hall of Justice, the headquarters of the Justice League, well, one of them. I think we're finally gonna get the big screen version of the Hall of Justice in Superman, and I'm so excited for that, if that's a route that we're going. Not only do I think the movie will end with the Hall of Justice finally making its live action debut, but I think the movie will end up being a springboard for a Justice League International movie. Now, here's where I think that. James Gunn has often said that his favorite comics, or the ones that he talks about the most, are a lot of comics from the 80s, probably ones that he grew up reading a lot. And one of the big titles of that era was specifically Justice League International, and it featured characters like Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Maxwell Lord, Metamorpho, Batman, and even Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl. Interesting that almost all of those are either in Superman, confirmed to have an upcoming project, or heavily rumored to have an upcoming project or be returning at some point in the near future in this DC universe. Almost like it was an intentional choice. Lastly, end credits wise, I think the movie will tease a future appearance of Brainiac, that long overdue character that people have been wanting and waiting for in an upcoming Superman movie forever. I absolutely see Brainiac being a villain that James Gunn wants to play with sooner rather than later. Plus, you can continue laying the groundwork in the upcoming Supergirl movie, because if anything, Brainiac has become more of a Supergirl villain than Superman in recent years. While Brainiac is not the main villain of the Supergirl story that they're adapting, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's got some form of presence in that story, continuing laying the breadcrumbs for a future Brainiac appearance. Well, what do you guys think? What are your big, bold predictions for the upcoming James Gunn Superman movie? I know we've got a lot of mixed opinions on the movie. That's super cool. Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below, as I can from you guys. And as always, if you like what you see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.